one of the things we want to do in our sidebar is display our most recent blog post. So that's what you see right here. It's looking just how we want it, only this is just static stuff. This is just a copy and paste of HTML from our HTML and CSS template. We want to do this dynamically, get it to pull from the database the most recent blog post. So I have open our project in TextMate. We're working with the sidebar.php file. And here is the code right here that's dealing with this area. It says latest post, and it just has a static date in here, a static title, and some lorem ipsum text. We want to replace that with dynamic WordPress stuff to make this pull. So in order to pull that kind of content from the WordPress database, we're going to be using a special function called query posts. It's a really powerful, cool function that allows us to adjust what WordPress gives back to us. We're going to pass it some parameters which make those adjustments. This is really easy one. We just want one thing back, and we want the most recent post back. So we're going to pass it just one single parameter called posts per page, and we're going to say equals 1. Just give us one thing back. A lot of times you'll see this query posts function used before a WordPress loop. Now, the whole concept of a loop is that it loops. It goes again and again. So if there's multiple posts you want returned, like if we said post per page 5, that loop would run 5 times, and we would output 5 chunks of HTML that is appropriate for that. Since we only have one, we don't really need to write the code for the opening of the loop. We're just going to use this little part of it that says this called the post, which sets up the ability to use some other functions that we're going to need here. So what are those other things? Well, instead of using this static date right here, we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to use a special function called the date. So that's that. No more static date, now a dynamic date. We're going to want to be able to click this title. So we're going to have an anchor tag for the title. So what's the actual title? Well, it's just the title. So PHP, the title. What is the anchor link to? Well, the permalink. So another special PHP function, the permalink. Now, these things, the date, the permalink, the title, are enabled by the post. That sets these things up. So if that wasn't there, that would be a problem. But of course, we're going to leave that there. Now, instead of this lorem ipsum text, one last thing, we're going to use the excerpt. So if we save this, in our sidebar now, instead of the static content, it's going to be this, because this is our most recent blog post right now. It's the one that just came in when we installed WordPress, this hello world. So let's refresh. And instead of the static content was there, we have the date this article was published, the title, and you can see it's linked now. If I click on it, I'll go to that post. We're not quite ready for that yet, though. And an excerpt. So this is dynamic now, pulling in the most recent post. The last thing that we want to touch on here is whenever you manipulate the query, like we're doing here, we're changing the query for this page. We want to reset that query just in case someone else were to use it later. It's just kind of the courteous thing to do, and we can do that real quick with WP reset query. That way, if we're going to use query posts again, perhaps later in the sidebar, it's okay and it won't be affected by this. It'll just be back to the default query. Well, let's save, and it's not going to change anything over here. It's just the right thing to do. So that's how you can pull the latest post from your WordPress database and display it in your sidebar.